Travis Alexander woke to the soft hum of the morning sun spilling through his bedroom window. The scent of fresh coffee wafted in from the kitchen, a comforting constant in his otherwise hectic life. By 29, Travis had built a reputation for being driven, disciplined, and kind-hearted, a young man admired by colleagues, friends, and family alike. His faith guided him, his career in sales demanded his energy, and his friends relied on his easy smile and steady presence. But beneath that seemingly perfect exterior lay complications that no one could see. Complications shaped by a woman whose presence loomed over his life like a storm cloud waiting to break, Jodi Arias. She had a magnetic charm, a way of drawing Travis into her orbit with words soft as velvet and intentions he believed were sincere. Yet behind that charm was an intensity he could not entirely decipher, a restless, calculating intensity that sometimes left him uneasy. The morning began like any other. Travis checked his phone while pouring coffee, eyes skimming texts from friends and coworkers. One message caught his attention, a simple invitation to a weekend gathering at a mutual friend's house. Harmless, innocuous. But in the hands of someone like Jodi, it was a spark waiting for kindling. In another part of town, Jodi Arias sat cross-legged on her bed, scrolling through her phone, the glow illuminating her face. She replayed old arguments, words that had stung months ago, twisting them in her mind until they felt like deliberate betrayals. A text from Travis about a social gathering might have meant nothing, but in her eyes it became evidence of neglect, of a betrayal she could not forgive. Her heartbeat quickened. She plotted, not with rationality, but with obsession. Every detail of Travis's life became a point of fixation, every glance and gesture a subtle slight. Travis, meanwhile, remained unaware of the storm brewing beyond his front door. He dressed carefully, straightening his tie, reviewing his day in his mind. Meetings, calls, a workout later, and the evening planned with Jodi. He assumed it would be a normal night, maybe a quiet dinner, a conversation, some laughter. He did not anticipate the undercurrent of tension, the fragile thread on which his safety now hung. Their texts that morning were innocuous, peppered with casual questions about what to eat, minor jokes about schedules, and reminders of small errands. Yet Jodi read each word as though it carried hidden meaning, a cryptic message pointing to slights he had never intended. Her thoughts twisted the mundane into the menacing. She traced every plan he made, every call he received, dissecting intentions, assigning guilt. Travis remained blissfully unaware, smiling at his phone, thinking her responses were affectionate, unaware that the calm surface belied a dangerous undercurrent. By late afternoon, Travis prepared for the evening. He showered, changed, and paused briefly to look in the mirror, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. His eyes betrayed a hint of nervousness, not fear, but the apprehension of someone who sensed life's unpredictability. He didn't know, of course, that Jodi's nerves were already taut, her mind spinning a web of imagined betrayals. Jodi left her apartment later that evening, her movements deliberate, almost ritualistic. She wore an outfit that spoke of care, yet she moved with a quiet intensity, a sense of purpose beyond casual affection. Each step toward Travis's house was measured, the weight of her obsession invisible, yet palpable. Her thoughts were consumed with a single idea. Tonight, everything between them would be settled, one way or another. Travis answered the door with his usual warmth, oblivious to the storm. The first moments were calm. She smiled, he smiled, and they exchanged pleasantries, the air filled with casual chatter about work, friends, and mundane events. But beneath the smiles, a silent tension lingered. Travis tried to bridge it with humor, subtle deflections, attempting to keep the conversation light, while Jodi's mind silently cataloged every word, every hesitation. The atmosphere thickened. The soft tick of a clock in the living room, the distant hum of traffic outside became almost oppressive in their significance. Jodi's eyes lingered too long on Travis's movements, interpreting his casual gestures as betrayals. Travis, unaware of the growing danger, laughed at a joke, but the sound jarred in Jody's mind. It became evidence of his thoughtlessness. She shifted the conversation to the text he received earlier, casually at first, testing the waters. Travis mentioned it offhandedly, expecting a polite discussion, but Jody read into it layers of meaning that weren't there. Her voice, soft at first, grew sharper, tinged with accusation. Travis felt the first prickle of unease, but misread it as frustration over a minor misunderstanding. Their dialogue became a delicate dance. Travis attempting to soothe, Jody pressing, probing, circling the edges of her obsession. Her internal monologue revealed her thought patterns, rationalizations, justifications, and plans she did not yet voice. Every glance at his phone, every comment he made, reinforced her conviction that she had been wronged. As night fell, the ordinary became ominous. Shadows lengthened across the living room, the glow of lamps casting shapes that seemed almost sentient. The tension was subtle, cinematic, an invisible line drawn between two people who knew each other intimately, yet were strangers in this critical moment. Travis felt something shift, but could not pinpoint it, a feeling of foreboding, a whisper that something was off. Part 1 closes with them sitting across from each other, the room quiet except for the low hum of the air conditioner. Travis sips his drink, attempting casual conversation. Jody's eyes narrow, thoughts churning, a dangerous decision forming at the edges of her mind. The calm of the evening is deceptive, a fragile veneer over a gathering storm. The audience knows what Travis does not. The night ahead will shatter all pretense, changing lives irreversibly. The evening had begun innocuously, with the faint clink of glasses and casual laughter, but beneath the surface, the air crackled with tension. Travis Alexander tried to keep the conversation light, steering away from arguments and sensitive topics. He smiled, leaned forward slightly, and spoke in measured tones, hoping to diffuse the barely noticeable tension. But Jody Arias had other intentions. Every laugh, every gesture, every casual glance from Travis felt to her like a slight, a betrayal, or proof that he was slipping from her grasp. Her gaze was sharp, almost predatory. She watched him move around the room, noting the way he absent-mindedly tapped his phone screen or glanced at his watch. To any observer, it would appear obsessive, irrational, perhaps even paranoid. To Travis, it was confusing, the slightest hint of friction in what he assumed would be a normal evening. He had learned, over time, to navigate Jody's moods, but tonight, nothing seemed to fit the usual patterns. The conversation pivoted subtly at first. Jody asked about the text he had received earlier in the day, a harmless invitation to a friend's party. Her voice was deceptively calm, but Travis sensed the undercurrent. He explained casually, dismissing the significance, but she probed further, each question layered with accusation. Her words were calculated, yet fueled by emotional volatility. They carried a weight heavier than any ordinary conversation should bear. Travis's unease grew. He noted her clipped tone, the way her hands tightened on her drink, the brief pauses that seemed loaded with unsaid meaning. He tried humor, tried to appeal to reason, but every attempt only seemed to inflame her further. The camera of imagination lingers on these small gestures, the way her eyes flicker with suspicion, the subtle quiver in her jaw, the tense rigidity of her posture. The tension is almost tactile, pressing on Travis from all sides. Jody's internal monologue reveals her reasoning. Each innocent act from Travis, each missed glance or neutral word, becomes a sign of betrayal. Her obsession reshapes reality. She recounts every past slight, real or imagined, twisting them into a narrative of revenge and justice only she can deliver. Travis, still smiling, unaware of how dangerously close the line has been drawn, continues to talk, to reason, to plead indirectly through logic that she refuses to accept. The confrontation escalates physically without any warning. Jody leans forward, voice rising, words sharp and accusing. Travis recoils slightly, not out of fear, but from shock. He cannot comprehend the sudden shift. Objects on the table rattle. A lamp wobbles with the force of her hand slamming down. The subtle shift in the room is cinematic. Shadows dance wildly across walls, the soft glow of the lamp distorted by panic, the tension palpable to the audience, as though they are in the room themselves. Travis's mind races. He tries to calm her, his words carefully measured. "Jody, let's just sit down and talk. It's not what you think," he pleads, but she interrupts, louder now, voice trembling yet forceful. She recounts events from months ago, accusations of betrayal, moments where she felt slighted or dismissed. Her voice is alternately soft, coaxing, and then cutting like glass, unpredictable, dangerous. The pattern is deliberate, a psychological chess game in which Travis is unaware he is already in check. The stakes intensify as Jody's actions become unpredictable. She steps closer, invading his space, her hands gesturing in abrupt, jarring motions. Travis instinctively leans back, trying to maintain distance, trying to reason, trying to de-escalate. But the distance is illusory. She is already inside the invisible barrier that separates obsession from violence. The narrative shifts between perspectives, Travis's rational, frightened calculations versus Jody's obsessive, chaotic justifications. The contrast magnifies suspense. Jody pulls out a photo of a moment Travis had shared, a memory, an innocuous memento from happier times, and twists it into proof of deceit. Her eyes glitz with a dangerous mixture of nostalgia and rage. Travis, heart pounding, realizes that reasoning may no longer work. His words falter, humor is gone. The room is tense, a pressure cooker of unspoken grievances, misinterpretations, and obsessive calculations. The audience can almost hear the unsteady thrum of his pulse. Time seems to stretch, seconds elongating with each moment of uncertainty. Every slight movement, every shift in posture, every flicker of emotion becomes significant. Travis edges toward the door, seeking a neutral ground, an exit from the storm he barely understands. Jody anticipates this, her movements quick, almost preemptive, her eyes following his every motion. The scene is cinematic. Light flickers from a ceiling fan, shadows stretch across the floor, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator underscores the tension. The argument reaches a crescendo, voices echo, rising and falling, sharp syllables punctuating the silence. Jody's accusations come faster now, interspersed with moments of eerie calm as she calculates her next move. Travis raises his hands in an attempt to soothe her, but the gesture is misinterpreted as mockery, a final straw in her unraveling perception of reality. The psychological tension is nearly unbearable. The audience feels trapped in the room, witnessing a disaster in slow motion, knowing it cannot end well. Small physical gestures amplify the suspense. A glass tips slightly on the table, a chair scrapes against the floor, hands tremble, subtle but telling signs of the imminent danger. Travis senses the shift, the narrowing of possibilities, and begins to understand the magnitude of the threat. But understanding alone is insufficient. The storm is already upon him, a culmination of obsession, misperception, and unrestrained emotion. Finally, Jody advances, her voice low but dangerous, eyes locked on Travis with a chilling intensity. Travis takes a deep breath, trying to buy time, trying to find a solution, but his options are rapidly disappearing. The narrative emphasizes his fear without descending into melodrama. Each thought, each heartbeat is detailed, drawing the audience into the immediacy of the confrontation. The part ends on a note of unbearable suspense. Travis glances toward the door, the only visible escape, while Jody inches closer, silent determination etched in every line of her body. The camera of imagination lingers on the knife in the kitchen drawer, barely visible, and the audience knows the danger that Travis still cannot fully grasp. The calm of the evening has shattered, the storm is fully upon them, and the confrontation has set the stage for tragedy. The room was silent, save for the rapid thrum of Travis Alexander's heartbeat and the soft, almost imperceptible hum of the ceiling fan. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow elongated into a threat. Travis edged toward the door, hoping to create distance, to de-escalate the tension that had become suffocating in the last hour. Jodi Arias's eyes followed him like a predator's, unblinking, calculating. In her mind, there was no argument to resolve, no compromise to be had. Only one outcome made sense. Travis had to pay for imagined betrayals. Travis's rational mind searched frantically for solutions. "Jodi, please, let's calm down. We can talk this through," he pleaded, his voice tight, strained. But she interpreted his calm reasoning as condescension, an attempt to manipulate, to dismiss her feelings. Her pulse quickened, hands trembling ever so slightly, yet controlled, precise. Her obsession had sharpened into something dangerous, cold, lethal, and unstoppable. Suddenly, the air shifted. Jodi moved with a speed that caught Travis off guard. A sudden lunge, a flash of motion toward the kitchen counter, where a knife had been left unattended. The narrative slows time here, making the audience feel each heartbeat, each second stretching into eternity. Travis stumbled back, a gasp escaping his lips, as the glint of steel reflected in the soft lamplight. The first strike missed, but it wasn't meant to. It was a warning, a test of his reactions. Travis's eyes widened in disbelief. "Jodi, no!" he shouted, but she was beyond reasoning. Her movements were precise, practiced, almost ritualistic. Every step, every swing, every advance carried the weight of her obsession, a deadly certainty that gave her purpose. Travis tried to defend himself, but the struggle was uneven. Jodi's determination fueled her strength. Fear had sharpened her reflexes. She cornered him near the counter, eyes blazing with intensity, and he realized with chilling clarity that she would not stop. The knife in her hand became an extension of her will, a physical manifestation of her anger, jealousy, and distorted love. The narrative shifts seamlessly between perspectives. Travis experiences panic, disbelief, and terror, his mind racing for an escape, for a chance to reason with someone he once trusted implicitly. Meanwhile, Jodi's inner monologue reveals a warped sense of righteousness. She tells herself she is correcting a wrong, that he has led her to this moment, that this act is inevitable. The contrast amplifies suspense, drawing the audience deeper into the horror of inevitability. The struggle intensifies. Furniture tips, a chair crashes to the floor, and the dull thud of the knife hitting the counter echoes in the small room. Travis's breathing is ragged, sweat drips from his forehead. He dodges, attempts to push her away, to grasp the door handle, but the room is too small, the situation spiraling out of control. Each motion, each breath, each tense second is described to maximize tension, placing the audience directly in the room with them. Jodi's face alternates between rage and an eerie calm, the duality of obsession and control. She cornered Travis, and in those moments, time seems almost suspended. Travis's mind races through memories, moments of happiness, laughter, affection, and now the incomprehensible reality of imminent death. The audience, too, is caught in this suspended moment, holding their breath as every detail of movement, sound, and thought is magnified. And then it happens. A sudden motion, a decisive strike, swift, violent, and shocking. Travis stumbles, a gasp of pain and surprise escaping him. The narrative focuses on psychological horror rather than gratuitous gore, highlighting the terror, disbelief, and tragedy rather than just the physicality. The room seems to constrict around him, shadows elongating, light flickering. every sound magnified, the world narrowing to the struggle for survival. Travis falls to the floor, stunned, his mind struggling to process what has occurred. Jody, still focused and relentless, hesitates only briefly, a moment that feels like an eternity, then continues, driven by obsession. The struggle is chaotic, desperate, yet precise in her mind. Every move is purposeful, every reaction from Travis is evidence of betrayal that demands punishment. The narrative paints the horror in cinematic detail, the tilt of a lamp, the scattering of papers, the gleam of the knife catching the lamplight, the sound of Travis's labored breathing punctuating the otherwise silent room. Jody's perspective, by contrast, is chillingly controlled, her thoughts methodical, calculating, convinced of the inevitability of her actions. This dual perspective creates tension that is both psychological and visceral, keeping the audience on edge. Finally, the struggle ends. Travis lies still, the life that once seemed so full, now extinguished in the quiet domestic room. Silence descends, almost oppressive in its normalcy. The contrast between the horror of the act and the mundane environment, a living room, a kitchen, the faint hum of the refrigerator, intensifies the shock. The narrative lingers on this eerie stillness, allowing the audience to absorb the magnitude of the act. Jody pauses, breathing heavily, her body tense yet composed. There is a fleeting flash of doubt, a flicker of fear, but it is quickly suppressed by a renewed sense of purpose. In her mind, the act was necessary, inevitable, and justified. She methodically cleans, arranges, and composes herself. The narrative emphasizes the chilling normalcy with which she moves, almost as if nothing had happened. The audience is left with a sense of unease, the psychological horror lingering long after the act itself. Outside, the night is quiet, indifferent to the tragedy that has just occurred. Travis's friends, unaware of the storm that has just passed, continue their lives, while the world within the walls of his home has been irrevocably altered. Jody steps outside briefly, breathing in the cool night air, her mind racing with thoughts of escape, of perception, of what must be done next. The part concludes with the tension of aftermath. The murder is complete, but the consequences are only beginning. Questions of discovery, investigation, and accountability loom. The audience is left suspended in a state of dread, knowing that what has occurred cannot be undone, and that the coming hours, days, and weeks will reveal the chilling reality of obsession turned fatal. The morning after the murder dawned with a deceptive calm. The sun rose over the city, painting streets and houses in warm light, entirely unaware of the darkness that had unfolded within one quiet home. For Travis Alexander, the day would never come. For Jodi Arias, the aftermath began, a chaotic blend of fear, calculation, and desperate attempts to control perception. Detectives arrived at Travis's home after a neighbor's call. The narrative emphasizes their methodical, deliberate movements. Gloves snapped into place, flashlights cutting through shadows, cameras clicking, voices low and controlled. The atmosphere was tense, charged with the gravity of the discovery. Forensic teams moved with precision, documenting evidence, photographing every detail, measuring and preserving the scene. The narrative draws attention to the contrast between meticulous professional order and the chaotic violence that had occurred just hours before. As they examined the room, the investigators pieced together the evidence: traces of blood, disrupted furniture, and the crucial detail, a phone left on the table with messages that would later become pivotal. Among the texts, one in particular stood out: the message Travis had received that evening. Innocuous in content, it now loomed as a catalyst, a single line of communication that had indirectly sparked the fatal confrontation. The detectives noted the significance, careful to follow the chain of events without judgment, letting the evidence speak. Meanwhile, Jodi Arias had retreated into a careful performance. She claimed innocence, portraying herself as a victim of circumstance. She crafted her narrative, rehearsing details and emotions, attempting to convince investigators and ultimately a future jury that her actions were either defensive or accidental. The audience sees the duality, her outward composure contrasting sharply with the inner turmoil, paranoia, and obsessive rationalizations that had driven her to murder. As the investigation deepened, the forensic evidence told a story that could not be denied. Blood patterns, the trajectory of injuries, and the timeline reconstructed from phone logs and security footage formed an unassailable narrative. Detectives worked tirelessly, piecing together moments from that fateful night with painstaking accuracy. Each discovery increased the tension, highlighting the gravity of obsessive behavior when left unchecked. When the case reached the courtroom, the narrative shifted to the drama of legal battle. Prosecutors presented a chilling reconstruction of events, guiding the jury through the sequence of obsession, argument, and violent escalation. Each witness, each piece of evidence, each text message and forensic report was a brushstroke painting a portrait of premeditated danger. The courtroom itself felt cinematic. Every gavel strike, every gasped response, every moment of tension heightened suspense, drawing the audience into the emotional and psychological stakes. Jodi Arias's defense attempted to counter with claims of self-defense and mental instability. The courtroom became a stage for conflicting narratives, one depicting calculated obsession and cold-blooded murder, the other portraying fear, confusion, and victimization. The audience is made to feel the uncertainty, the shifting perceptions of truth, and the delicate balance between justice and persuasion. Media coverage amplified the drama. News outlets dissected every detail, broadcasting theories, interviews, and commentary. The public became invested in the story, following each revelation with a mix of fascination and horror. The narrative acknowledges this, showing how obsession extends beyond the immediate participants, affecting families, communities, and a nation grappling with the senselessness of violence. Through it all, the families of Travis Alexander endured their own private torment. Grief was raw, compounded by the public spectacle, by the slow unspooling of the events that had ended a life so abruptly. The narrative captures their anguish, moments of quiet reflection and private mourning, emphasizing the human cost of obsession and violence. As the trial concluded, the final evidence was presented: the messages, the forensic reconstruction, and the expert testimony. Each detail reinforced the narrative of deliberate action. Jodi's attempts to manipulate perception faltered under the weight of incontrovertible proof. The courtroom remained tense as the jury deliberated, the anticipation almost unbearable. Every observer, from family members to viewers of media coverage, was acutely aware of the stakes. The verdict was delivered with the slow, solemn cadence of judicial finality. Guilty on counts of first-degree murder, the words reverberated through the courtroom, through the families, and through the broader audience. For Travis's loved ones, a measure of closure arrived, though tempered by the magnitude of loss. For Jodi, the verdict marked the end of her freedom, the culmination of obsessive impulses that had escalated to irreversible violence. In the aftermath, reflection became inevitable. The story lingered on the haunting lesson of a single text message, a seemingly trivial interaction that escalated through obsession, misperception, and emotional instability into tragedy. The narrative emphasizes psychological insight, how human behavior, when shaped by obsession and distorted perception, can lead to irreparable consequences. Readers and viewers alike are left to ponder the fragile line between love and obsession, control and chaos, reason and irrationality. The audience is also left with the eerie contrast between the ordinary and the horrific. Travis's home, once a space of warmth, laughter, and routine, had become the site of unspeakable violence. Yet the world outside continued as usual, streets filled with commuters, neighbors walking dogs, sunlight spilling over lawns, all unaware of the nightmare that had transpired behind closed doors. This juxtaposition deepens the chilling effect, reminding readers of the hidden dangers of obsession and the unpredictable consequences of human behavior. Finally, the narrative closes with reflection on the enduring impact of the tragedy. Friends, family, and communities grapple with grief, trauma, and the questions left unanswered. The case becomes a cautionary tale, a reminder that seemingly small actions, texts, arguments, moments of tension can escalate when intertwined with obsession and volatility. The audience is left with a lingering sense of unease, the story haunting them beyond its final sentence. Justice has been served in a legal sense, but the emotional and psychological echoes of that night continue to ripple outward, affecting all who were touched by it. Travis's life, his vibrancy and potential were extinguished too soon. Jodi Arias's actions serve as a stark example of how obsession, unchecked and unexamined, can become lethal. And in the end, the story reminds readers that human lives, relationships, and emotions are delicate threads, often easily frayed, with often irreversible consequences. The narrative closes with quiet imagery: an empty chair at the dinner table, a single lamp casting long shadows, and the phone that once carried a trivial text, now a haunting relic of a fatal chain of events. The audience is left with the weight of reflection, the chilling knowledge that sometimes the smallest spark can ignite the deadliest fire.